Another very useful action query is the append query. This allows you to take some data and add it to an existing table. Now, we saw much earlier when we were doing importing that trying to import directly into an Access table can have its headaches. An option way around this would be to import into a new table, which you can manage very easily because it just matches the imported data layout, and then use an append query to decide what goes where. So our first step here will be to import some of that data again. So we have external data. We have it in Excel. We then browse to the correct folder. The files we have are in your working folder. We're going to import the sales data. And we're going to import it into a new table in the current database. So we're not going to worry or try to append it directly, and we're not going to link to it. So we're just going to import it. Okay, the wizard issue again pops up. First row contains column headings. It does. And then we can check each of the fields. Let's see, double number type, that's a date, and that's a double number type. And that's just the ID, which is actually blank. Next, let Access add a primary key. Actually, we ought to. Let's go back. The ID column that is blank, we can skip it. And then let Access add its own primary key, which will just be an auto number field. Import to table sales. Close. And you see the sales table then comes in. There was another Excel file in there, so we go to Excel, browse. It's the new employees Excel file. Again, we're just going to import into a new table. Everything's in B employee sheet. The first row contains headings. Next, quite happy with all of those. We'll choose the primary key this time. It's the employee ID. Next, import to DBOV employee. Let's call this TBL import. Finish. So our two tables are in. What we then want to do is use a query to select the correct data to append to our existing tables. So we go to Query Design. First one we'll look at is the sales table. We're interested not really in the ID actually because it's unique, the value, the date and the client. And we want to append this data. If we view it, we'll see we've got quite a few records, 18,500 in fact, and we want to append this data to our existing TBL sales. So we change this query into an append query. We then have to tell it which table to append the data to. Now, these are the tables in the current database, or we can do it to another database. Well, they're going into the current one, it's TBL sales. Okay. And we then have to come down to the grid and actually choose which field to map each imported column to. So I want the value to actually go into the sales value. You see here, you don't have to have the named columns exactly the same. In fact, if they are, Access maps them itself. If not, then we just do it ourselves. So the date's going to go into the sales date column and the clients go into the sales client column. Let's save this so we can see what this looks like in our navigation pane. So that's QRY append sales. Okay. And you can see it appears here with a black exclamation mark because it's an action query. It's going to make changes. And then a green plus because it's going to add records. We can then view to see what records we're going to get, or go back and run, actually append the data. Just like the other action queries we've done, we're asked if we're sure, we're told what's going to happen. It's going to append 18,508 rows. Are we sure? Yes, we are. And the data is then appended to our TBL sales, which will now have increased dramatically to 37,016 records. And close that, and it sits here in case we want to do it again. Now the employees one, this is our TBL import. Let's pick up all the fields. So I'm double clicking the heading there and then click and drag down. I then change this into an append query and I want to append this to our TBL customers. and then OK. Now you see here where the field names are exactly the same, Access has mapped them for us. Where they're not exactly the same, we either have to choose or to ignore. Well, the employee ID, I don't want to append that. Job title, can that be appended? Potentially it could go into the occupation column. Email address, email promotion doesn't really go anywhere. Additional contact information. We don't really have a field for that in here either. We can then view, see what that looks like. Looks quite good. Then back into design and run. However, we can't quite run because the country region name is actually a text field, but in the customers table, it's a numeric field. So what I need to do is find out what country these belong to, which is pretty much all United States. So I need to find out the United States ID, which is 12. And what we'll do instead is, instead of appending the country region name, we'll use a new column and say country ID colon 12. So that's a calculating field. It's not really doing much in the process of calculation, but it's assigning 12 to the country ID column, which I can then append to the country region name. So when I view that, I'll see 12s all down the end. Design, save, QRY append, new employees. OK, that then appears in my list. Exclamation mark for an action query, green plus for append, and then I can run. I'm told again I'm about to append 290 rows. That's fine. Yes. So I now have 290 extra customers. They'll all be at the end, but you can see the number's gone up. 18,798 now instead of 18,500. So that's a much more controlled way of importing data. We import the data into a new table, let Access decide on the data type, but then use an append query to pick and choose which columns of data go into which columns in our existing tables.